It takes a moment for God to touch you, but it will take a lifetime for you to be transformed. So the things God does are not the main thing. Those are not the real testimony. The real testimony are the transformations that happen. That a woman who did not fear God suddenly starts fearing God. That a woman who does not pray suddenly starts praying and God speaks to her. That a woman who was promiscuous, given to immorality, suddenly start burning for God. Those kinds of miracles, they don't end in time, they are eternal. Because even when you go to heaven, they will still write it that now your name is written in the book of life. A cancer can leave you, they will remember it in eternity because they don't fall sick there. And so there are three things you must be mindful of before God begins to do the natural one, because God will touch people here. The first thing that you need to be mindful of is how to keep your hunger for God. That's what the devil will take from you any day, anytime. When your hunger is stolen, you will discover that you who used to pray at night, you will stand up and sleep will flog you back to bed. You who used to love the things of God, you carried your good news Bible and read through. In a year you could read 3 times. Even when you were not seeing well, you strained your eyes with your glasses to read. Now you can no longer read the verse. It means your hunger is beginning to die. When your hunger begins to die, your spiritual life begins to die. And so in Matthew chapter 5 verse 6, Jesus was speaking. He said, blessed are they that hunger and thirst for righteousness. Righteousness means right standing with God. He said they shall be comforted. So there's a kind of comfort that God gives to people that you cannot pick by an impartation. There's a kind of comfort that comes to you because you pursued and desired God. You crave after God. And that kind of hunger, Jesus says, it comes with a blessing. He said, blessed are they. This kind of people, there's a blessing that is apportioned to them that nothing can steal away. Remember, when Jesus came to the house of Mary and Martha, the woman was carried away to entertain Jesus. And she was troubling her sister. She's not coming to help me. And Jesus said, leave her. You are all over and moving everywhere. He said, this one thing she has found, he said, it shall not be taken from her. So the people who keep their hunger for God, there is something God gives to them that nobody can take. I pray for somebody here that before this conference is over, you will find hunger for God and he will become your true husband in the spirit. In Psalm 63 verse 1 and 2, the psalmist was describing hunger. He said, as the deer panted after the water brooks, he says, so my soul longed after you in a dry and in a thirsty land where no water is. Now, those who know the deer, when the deer is thirsty, the deer can pick the scent of water from more than 100 miles away. And a deer can go to drink water from a river that it can be killed from. For those of you who watch Natural Wild, you'll notice that these crocodiles will hide under this water. And the deer knows that the crocodiles are there and they can kill them. But because of their love and affinity to water, they will still come to drink water from a crocodile-infested river. And many times crocodiles will come after them, they will still come back. Because there is something about the deer and water that the deer cannot stop. Because it looks as if the water becomes the source of its life. That's what happens to a man that has hunger for God. God becomes more important to you than the oxygen on your nostrils. God becomes the very source of your existence. Jesus is teaching us. He said when you get to that point where you thirst for God, he said there's a blessing that he will give to you. And the word blessing means to cause to prosper. So what Jesus was saying is that when a man becomes hungry for God, it becomes natural for that man to prosper. Let me tell you something. There are certain men today that everything they do prospers. So long as they touch it, it begins to work. In fact, if you want something to work, get them to become a part of it. The moment they become a part of it, it begins to work. not because they bring any mental capacity into the matter. They just bring their presence. Their presence is one with God's presence, because they have mingled with God through hunger. Everything that God represents, that's what they represent. Now imagine if you carry God like that, what will happen to your family? Some of the prayers we are praying for our families, if we had enough hunger to bring God's presence to our family, those things will begin to happen naturally. There is a measure of God's presence you will carry, that if you enter a place, demons will go out. Not because you are praying, you came with a weight, and that weight you came with, demons cannot coexist there. Now imagine somebody who is praying to God about crisis in her family, whereas God is showing her a better way. The way God is showing her is, come into my presence. When you come into my presence will go with you like a canopy. Did you not read the children of Israel? It said for 40 days and 40 nights they carried the presence of God like a canopy, and these people were walking through wilderness. They were not walking through a forest. And in that wilderness, the Bible said their shoe grew with them, their clothes grew with them. The Bible said in the wilderness they did not lack water. The Bible said in the wilderness none of them was weary. The Bible said any nation they passed through, they licked that nation up until nations began to tremble. If they told you that Israel was coming towards you, you began to tremble, because you know that everywhere they come they prosper. In fact, God speaking in the book of Psalms, to say he rebuked kings for their sake. So there's a realm a man becomes blessed to, that even kings are placed under law not to dare them. He said he rebuked kings for their sake, and he gave a law in the spirit, touch not my anointed. He's not talking about pastors, he's talking about the children of Israel, because they had come under the glory. Because the anointing is the presence of God rubbing over you, and the way you come under that level of presence is when you hunger for God. That's why Jesus said, blessed are they that hunger. Because when a man begins to hunger for God, things begins to work for him. In Psalm 1 from verse 1 to 3, it said, blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor is seated in the seat of discomfort. He said, but his delight is the law of the Lord, and he said, on this law doth he meditate day and night. See the description of that man. He said that man is like a tree planted by the rivers of living waters. It produces its fruit in its season, and its leaf does not wither. See, there are many things you don't need to pray for. I don't remember when last I prayed for money, but if I carry my phone now, there's an alert on it. I can tell you randomly, people pray that they want to go to different nations. I say, for what? Those kinds of things, Christians pray for it as well. I don't know how to pray for visa. There are things a believer should not pray for, because if you are planted in God's presence, they happen to you by free course. How can believers gather and they are praying for healing, they are praying for bread, they are praying for wine? No, not the believer that hungers for God. Because when you get God, you get everything. When you catch God, you catch everything. Many times the things we pursue is a distraction. I pray for somebody today, everything stealing your hunger is buried this evening. The quality of your life is not tied to America, it's not tied to the UK. The quality of your life is tied to God's presence. Come into God's presence, they will seek you from everywhere. He said it's like the tree planted